So John, would you mind introducing yourself and telling me a little bit about the Brighton People's Assembly?
The People's Assembly was a national initiative which was started off just over a year ago. More than several people got together, quite a large group of quite influential people got together and signed a letter calling for a People's Assembly, and the main aim of the People's Assembly was to challenge the myth of austerity, and then there was a call for local organisations to form, which is what we did in Brighton. And Brighton is Brighton, and there's a very diverse group of people involved in the People's Assembly, and I think the diversity is what makes it very vibrant. The idea of the People's Assembly is that we stand alongside a range of different organisations that are fighting austerity in a range of different ways, and support those organisations and encourage those organisations to do that.
What would your opinion be of how the austerity measures, the government's austerity measures, have affected people in this country?
Well, I think it's almost like sort of a stealth approach to actually oppressing people, disadvantaging people quite badly. In everyday life, most working people have been suffering quite badly because of the austerity measures. Wages haven't been keeping pace with inflation. Rents have been increasing at a massive rate, and we're particularly affected by that here in Brighton and the South East and in London. The health service has had its funding cut, and so the health service can be delivered is being stretched. People are on very short-term contracts when they're finding work, and sometimes they're on no contracts at all, just working from day to day. So for those people that are working hard, it's very, very difficult. Those people that aren't fortunate enough to be able to work for a range of reasons, many of which are often beyond their control, are facing cuts in benefits and increasing hardship. So it feels the vast majority of people are suffering really because of the myth of austerity, which in my mind was caused by the banks and a very badly managed economic system the world over, and also in this country. And it feels that everybody isn't able, that people feel that they're not able to challenge that or even know what the real reasons are. So the government sells this myth of austerity, and poor people suffer for that.
What would be your opinion on the media agenda, that the austerity-driven agenda of the media, and would you say that's got something to do with why organisations like the People's Assembly don't get much coverage in the mainstream press?
Well, I think lots of organisations that are fighting austerity as a government policy don't get much coverage. I think there's been a sea change, and that's most notable in the BBC, which is supposed to be the people's media, really, in effect, and the BBC's become quite biased in its coverage. It's interesting, not just on austerity issues, but even on the forthcoming election. UKIP's getting masses of coverage, and other alternative parties, even if you take it very unbiased view, such as the Green Party, which I hasten to add I'm not a member. Well, I wouldn't say hasten to add, but I'm not a member, so I've no reason to promote them any more than anybody else. Have not been getting much coverage at all. So the alternative view to austerity has not been getting much cover in the mainstream media. In the rest of the media, it feels very much controlled, probably because it's very much controlled by big business, and so the government's austerity agenda has been promoted in that, and no alternative views have really been shown. It's quite interesting. Recently there was a national People's Assembly demonstration in London where 50,000 people gathered, and it hardly got any coverage. It started off outside of Bush House at the BBC and still got very little coverage. So it's quite stark and quite marked how I suppose the establishment is controlling the media.
John, earlier you mentioned you touched upon some of the main aims of the People's Assembly in Brighton. Would you mind doing that for me?
Now, we're a I'd say quite a new organisation. I've already indicated we've just been functioning really for about a year. So organisations go through a storming, forming and norming process, and hopefully we're not so normal yet that we're not thinking of new ideas. So I think what we try and do is think laterally about ways that we can support, as I said earlier, the range of organisations around Brighton that are fighting austerity, and there are many. So there'll be trade unions in the workplace which are trying to ensure that the working people have decent conditions and that decent public services are delivered, to a range of organisations such as the Living Rents campaign, the local Defend the NHS campaign. We've supported the Fuel Poverty campaign and a range of others. So we see our role as enabling opportunities for a range of different groups to come together and put their views forward. So I suppose we've got a role in terms of media ourselves. We've got a website, we've got the usual Twitter feeds and Facebook, and we try and promote different people's campaigns through that. We also are increasingly seeing ourselves as taking a coordination role as well, because there are lots of large and small groups that are groups of people that are fighting different aspects of austerity, and it's important that those groups are coordinating their activities. And we also see ourselves as sort of bringing people together on a very sort of common value base. Lots of different groups are either fighting for their individual campaigns or have got varied political views across I suppose the broad left spectrum. That can often be divisive, as happens anywhere really with any groups, and so we see ourselves as hopefully encouraging people together to come together on common grounds, and we think that's worked to a large extent, but you need to ask others about whether or not they feel it's successful.
John, can you tell me a little bit about how the Brighton's People's Assembly is funded?
I can, because I've got the rather dubious role of treasurer for the Brighton People's Assembly. We receive money from various sources. We don't have a massive amount of funding that we get. It's from a lot of individual donations, from collections at meetings, but we've had two significant areas where we've been getting some income in. One's come from an NHS ribbons campaign, which is an innovative idea. So one of the members of the People's Assembly, by the way, it's free to become a member, you don't need to pay to become a member, but one of the members of the Assembly made some ribbons for Defend the NHS campaign, and we asked people for a £1 donation for that, and that went extremely well and gave us some funding to start with. Then another member started an event called Small Revolutions, which is a kind of multi-arts social event which takes place once a month, and that's been really successful and good fun too. So it provides a social environment, lots of different artists, musicians, poets, comedians, dancers come and perform in quite a friendly environment, and we usually either do that in a local pub or a restaurant that have all been very supportive, and we just ask for donations at the door, and I've been really pleased how people have been able to contribute to that, and that's given us some bottom line funding. What we do with our funding, as I said, we don't have a massive amount of funding, but what we're trying to do is recycle that into the campaigns that we support. So for example, with the Living Rents campaign and the housing campaign, we along with them, we underwrote the costs of the venue. We sometimes pay for leaflets. We pay for people's transport to go along to events as well.
Would you say there is an argument for austerity? I mean, after the financial crisis, there was a huge deficit. Is there an argument to say that the government is justified in trying to cut welfare spending to manage the deficit?
Well, I think there is an argument to manage an economy effectively, but does that mean penalising those that have least control and didn't cause the problem in the first place, really? So I think it's how the savings are managed. I just want to participate in a fair and equal society and make a contribution to a fair and equal society that isn't loaded in the direction of banks or big corporate companies. There are real problems with tax, the way that the tax system works in this country, and there are lots of ways that the big corporates don't pay the tax on the business that they apply in this country, because they're able to reside in various tax havens, for want of a better description. And I kind of think that's dire, really. If they're selling services in this country and they're not even paying tax at the normal rate, that feels appalling to me, and I really think that should be tackled. And I suppose the government will say, well, or this current government might say, well, they won't invest in this country if they've got to pay tax at the quite reasonable tax rate in this country. But my guess is if there's a pound to be made instead of £10, people will still want to make that pound, really. So I think it's a loaded argument, and quite frankly, if they don't want to invest in this country, they can go elsewhere and do that. I think there's quite a challenge in terms of the global economy, and I think a lot of the issues have got to be addressed globally as well.
In terms of what's coming up for the People's Assembly, are there any concrete plans in the next kind of 8 months up into the general election? What kind of events or educational kind of seminars and things like that would you be hosting in order to get the kind of anti-austerity measure across?
Okay, well we're hoping before December to have an assembly of campaigns where we bring all the campaigns together, but we're really looking for one or two key influential national speakers who would attract a broader audience. And so the idea is that people come and talk about their individual campaigns very briefly, not for long, but also talk about the kind of support and input that they need, because we're aware that lots of people who are not involved and could be involved and need to know how to get involved, and we're aware that people want to get involved at various levels. Not everybody wants to stand on the stage, not everybody feels comfortable leafleting on North Street, so we want to find a range of ways that people can get involved and support all these different campaigns. So that's an opportunity for that to happen, as well as celebrate some of the success that all the campaigns that we're associated with and we would support have been having. So that's one clear thing we want to do, is about finding ways that we can bolster the range of existing anti-austerity campaigns on housing, NHS, on fuel poverty, on fighting the benefits cuts, for example, that have been going on, and also particularly around education as well, where there've been a lot of local campaigns which have sort of been fighting the way that austerity has been biting into education.
What would you say to someone who perhaps wants to get involved in these kind of campaigns with an organisation like the Brighton's People's Assembly? How would you encourage them to get involved?
Well, firstly, I'd say sign up to the People's Assembly, Brighton People's Assembly. You can get on the website, www.Brighton People's Assembly. I'm sure if you just put Brighton People's Assembly into Google, that'll come up. So I'd ask people to firstly just sign up. If you broadly support the aims of the People's Assembly are on the website. There's a sign up place on the website, and we'll send you monthly newsletters at least, and then you'll find out what's going on. You can also follow our Twitter and you'll also find out what's going on. So firstly, find out what's going on and see whether you like it, and then we'll also provide lots of opportunities of ways you can get involved. Just come along to meetings. There's lots of things you can do. You can help at different levels, be that leafleting, that might be supporting transport, that might just be donating a small amount of money to the People's Assembly, by which we can support other campaigns. You can come and make tea, bring cakes, and bring your ideas, because we don't have license on all sorts of ways on different ways of campaigning. People often come up with very innovative and creative ideas. So there's room for everybody in the People's Assembly, and don't feel that you've got to sign up and come every week to every meeting or every organising meeting. Just come along and contribute in whatever way you feel you can do that.